Hello, 11th and 12th graders. We're going to continue on with chapters 24 and 25 in our history book. Yesterday, we finished off talking about Karl Marx, and we're going to continue that today. We are on note 14, so go ahead and open your books, your workbooks, and get 14 done. I am starting very late today. I apologize for that. It was because I've been doing grading all morning, all day actually. Since about 9 o'clock this morning. It's now 3:30, but that's kind of the life of a teacher. So if you sent in your assignments via Schoolworks, I did yours first. If you sent yours to me via my personal email, I didn't get to you as before now because I really was trying to do the Schoolworks turn-ins first, and I didn't even really open my personal email. I've just been swamped. So I'm getting to it. It is getting done. I promise I'm not going to leave any of you behind. We will get through this whole rest of this season. Please remember that you don't have to turn anything else in at this point. You can just hang on to the work after you've done it and turn it into the school once your book is complete. Okay? So you don't have to do any more emailing of me. Please don't email me anymore. No, I'm kidding. If you are to the point where you don't think you'll be able to make it to the school to do a turn-in, please let me know and we'll just arrange it. You can email me your assignments and I can email you the pages that we're going to continue on after we're done with this textbook. Okay, let's talk about Karl Marx. He was the man most responsible for the rise of modern socialism. Socialism had been around for quite a long time. In fact, if you look at the philosophies and teachings of the French Revolution, you can see socialism had a huge impact on that, even though it wasn't really called that at the time. But when you read about it, you watch how people acted, you see their philosophy, you can see socialism in the French Revolution. For Karl Marx, he didn't do this alone. He had a partner that he met in college in Germany named Engels. And the two of them worked together, and I use the word work loosely. The two of them did work together to create pamphlets, a couple of books, and he mostly did a lot of public speaking, for which he was not paid a lot of money. And as a result, he had to be basically funded by Engels. Engels himself was not a worker either, but his father was a little more lenient than Karl Marx's parents were. They were just done with Karl Marx because he basically stood up against everything that they believed and that they taught. And his constant harassment or talking down about that class of people, his parents' class of people who were the bourgeois or the middle class, frustrated them. And they got so sick and tired of him constantly blaming them for the way life was when he could easily have worked and contributed to society instead of just complaining about it, that the two of them had a family split between Marx and his wife and the mom and dad. So Engels ended up taking care of Karl Marx because Engels' father owned a tile factory in France and was very wealthy, and he had no problem giving his son money. His son then used that allowance to help pay for Karl Marx's lifestyle, which wasn't really much to write home about. And there were times when Engels' father would cut him off for a period of time because Engels and Marx would say something really awful about manufacturers being greedy and that they only wanted the lifeblood of the people. And, dad would cut him off for a while and then he'd give him more money again. So that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at two very spoiled brats who really have no background in actual work. They just like to complain about work that everybody else does. And as a result, it caused a lot of hardship between their families. Now, let's talk about the steps to communism. Let's talk about what makes communism a little different than socialism. Let's try that again. Communism is a form of socialism, just as fascism is. They're both forms of socialism. So anytime someone says they're pro-socialist, but they're not, I hate fascism, but I love socialism. Fascism and socialism go hand in glove there. So let's talk about the steps to communism. What makes communism unique in that social scale? Okay. First of all, we have the proletariat. That's the working class. Those are the people who actually do the hands-on jobs, the labor jobs. They would overthrow the established government. That's the first step, would be the overthrow of the established government. So the first thing that we look at when we look at communism, is there a violent overthrow? Because no one overthrows the government, peacefully, really. There's always violence there. Then the bourgeoisie, or the middle class, would be overthrown. Their property would be confiscated in what was called the dictatorship of the proletariat. So in other words, the people who make the least money or no money, the people of the very lowest class, would wipe out the established government and then overthrow the middle class and then take all of their stuff. The dictatorship would eventually wither away, and there would come into being a stateless, classless, perfect condition beyond socialism called communism. Now, socialism, as the parent of this idea network, wants to change things through the law. Little bit by little bit, they take away freedoms of people in a country. Little bit by little bit, they make the government more and more in charge. We do have to look out for that. Communism says we don't want to do it little bit by little bit. Let's just take over right now. Let's just destroy everything that we disagree with, and we will rise up and we will become the new ruling class. However, you'll notice that in Marx's little fantasy here, there would be a stateless, classless, perfect condition beyond socialism called communism, because Marx taught that capitalism, that is the voluntary exchange of goods and services for goods and services or money, was evil, that it was the cause of evil in the world. That is not true. Sin nature is. And that capitalism was all about greediness. That's not true. Capitalism is about making one thing into another thing and then voluntarily allowing people to exchange goods and services to get that thing. So here we have communism being presented as this perfect, classless, perfect condition beyond socialism, and that would be the ultimate of communism. The idea of living together. It's what communing means, to live together. He is planning this idyllic community that really cannot exist. Okay, I noticed that I am covering a little bit with my little square there. So I'm going to read that last note to you again. Okay, so the dictatorship would eventually wither. That word is wither, W-I-T-H-E-R, away. And there would come into being that's all you need to have there, is being a stateless, classless, perfect condition beyond socialism called communism. So the only words you're missing there are wither, being a, condition, communism. Hope you all got that. And if you didn't, you can just rewind a little bit. Okay, the Social Democratic Party, this was a German political party. It grew very strong between 1890 and 1914. They came very close to winning control of the government in several countries that make up the German political system. This is really, really important, guys. People have been talking in the United States about democratic socialism, like it is different from other kinds of socialism. It is not. Democratic socialism, the way people tend to describe it, is at least you get to choose how your life will stink. Democratic socialism is not really a thing. Okay, first of all, in our country, we are not a democracy. We are a federal republic, which means that the power of the government is split between state and federal government, the central government. So we have checks and balances as a result of that. We are not a democracy. We do not vote over every single thing. We hire representatives who will vote in our place when it comes to lawmaking. That gives us time to actually do the work that we need to do. And that's what the United States was built on, the ability to do work, to have the free enterprise system, to have the freedom to go out and make things that we know are wanted. We learn very quickly that if our invention is not wanted, we lose money on it, we stop making it, and we make something else that people do want. So here, the Social Democratic Party in the United States, people are trying to bring this back and saying, hey, we believe in democratic socialism. Everybody gets to vote on how bad everything's going to be. That's not really what they say. Their philosophy is Capitalism is greedy. People are poor because of capitalism. Again, not true. Capitalist countries are much wealthier than socialist countries overall, everywhere. But we are looking back. We have to go back and we have to study history so that we understand how this has happened before. This has already happened, and we have people in the United States today who are trying to make it happen again because they don't have a clue as to what really went on in history. Please learn your history so we don't end up with the same kind of garbage. So, Socialist Democratic Party grew strong between 1890 and 1914. They almost won control of the government. However, they did not. Now, during this time of upheaval of different political parties, the king or Kaiser of Germany, not a great fit, because he wanted really to go back in time and live like a feudal lord. He wanted to go out and win wars. He wanted to be a knight. He wanted to prove his power. So he forced this idea of making Germany one of the most aggressively militaristic. There we go. I was going to say materialistic. That's not right. Militaristic nations in Europe. Militaristic meaning they built up their weapons, they built up their arms, and they were looking for a fight. They were looking for a place where they could actually go in and flex their muscles and prove their manliness as Germany. This idea of Germany being the biggest, the best, the boldest, and Kaiser Wilhelm really wanting to flex his muscles and say, look, I'm the boss of the best country in the whole world. This is going to be a problem. In 1914, the major European powers were divided into two hostile camps. You had a triple alliance that was made up of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Austria had belonged to Germany in the past. They had split off when a family split and got married to another family, and they started their own country, and then Italy. And then the Triple Entente, which is Great Britain, France, and Russia. This doesn't mean that there weren't good vibes going on between these two groups. It was just a little more complicated than that. In Russia and Great Britain, they had a very close connection because the Queen Victoria line was in both camps. So the current king of Great Britain was the brother of the wife of the Tsar of Russia. So they were very, very close. However, the English family, the royal family of England, was of German stock. And they were very proud of the fact that they were of German stock. So it wasn't just one group arbitrarily hating another. It's just that there were some rumblings going on about really being proud of your own country, and almost to the point of saying, we're the best and everybody else stinks, which is really not the way you want to go with that. Okay, let's talk about Archduke Ferdinand. He was heir to the Austrian throne. He and his wife were visiting an area called Sarajevo. It was in Bosnia, and that was owned at the time by Austria-Hungary. Sorry, got it flipped there. The people who were native Serbians wanted their independence from Austria-Hungary. They felt that they were being treated as a lower class group of people, and so they wanted to carve out a little section for themselves. The Austria-Hungary Empire, however, is not going to let that happen, because that would mean they lose money, they lose taxes, and they lose people, and they lose land. So they were fighting really to keep the Bosnian town of Sarajevo as part of the Austrian-Hungary Empire. Well, while they were there visiting and trying to reach out and, kind of set the stage for some diplomacy, the Archduke and his wife were both shot by an assassin in this town. He was about 17 years old. He walked right up to the carriage and shot Wilhelm and then his wife and killed them both. So it was an assassination by one person killing two people. But this is going to spark an entire world war. For no other reason than the allies of Austria-Hungary were looking for a fight. They had built up military armaments for a very long time, and they were looking for a place to flex their muscles, and this was their opportunity. So 1 month after this assassination, and the young man was arrested, tried, executed, but 1 month later, Austria declared war on Serbia, which was one of their own territories. That began the Great War. How did the Austrian government declaring war on one of their own territories spark a world war? It had to do with the entangled alliances that happened within Europe. So the countries of Europe became, entangled by their alliance. They divided into two camps. As soon as Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, the Russians, who were not really big fans of Germany at the time, of Austria-Hungary at the time, they said, hey, Serbia, we will back you up. As soon as Russia said, we're going to back up Serbia, Germany immediately stepped in and said, okay, you know what? Austria-Hungary will back you up. And then France and Italy were on the same side as the Russian Empire. England joined the Russian Empire in their determination to back up Serbia. And then the German Empire, the Austria-Hungary Empire, and the Turkish Empire all ganged up together to fight against the Allied powers. So we have two camps here. We have Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey. And then the Allies, which were Great Britain, France, Russia, Serbia, Belgium, Romania, Japan. Japan's not even in Europe and it's getting involved. Portugal, Montenegro, Greece, and Italy. Of course, Turkey's not really involved either, or not European either, but they're going to get involved. So here we have what I call the playground war. It's two people having a fight, and instead of just fighting each other, it wasn't a pleasant thing. I mean, assassination is never a good thing. Assassination and then an execution, that's really where the whole thing should have stopped. But instead, these playground buddies just said, you know what, I'll be on your side, and I'll be on your side, and I'll be on your side. And the next thing you know, we have a world war where people are dying in ditches because these guys wanted so badly to pick a fight. There is really no other motivation for World War I. It's sad. It's really sad. This could have been handled right there as soon as that execution took place. That would have been it. But no, there had to be war declared, which is just ridiculous. Okay, going on to May 7th. Now, you notice that in those maps, the United States was not involved with that. In fact, we were warned by our first president, George Washington, in his final speech, and you guys read his final speech. It was in your textbook this year, your workbook, and you got to read it. Americans were told from the very beginning, stay away from foreign alliances. Don't get involved in entangled alliances. And really, George Washington was thinking about Europe at this time. Europe has always had problems not being in wars. They were constantly fighting against each other. Sometimes they'd call it a backyard war, where they would just fight over just like inches of property. It was ridiculous. They just could not seem to honor each other's boundaries. But even though the United States is not a part of this war, we were affected by this war. So the Imperial German Embassy published in the newspapers in the United States a notice. They published this and they warned the United States not to get on board ships. So I'll read this to you. Notice, travelers intending to embark on the Atlantic voyage are reminded that a state of war exists between Germany and her allies, and Great Britain and her allies. Now, have you noticed that things have shifted quite a bit already at the very beginning of this war? It is no longer about Austria-Hungary and Serbia. It is about Germany and Great Britain. These become the two most powerful nations that rise up. That the zone of war includes waters adjacent to the British Isles. That in accordance with formal notice given by the Imperial German government, vessels flying the flag of Great Britain or any of her allies are liable to destruction in those waters, and that travelers sailing in the war zone on ships of Great Britain or her allies do so at their own risk. And that was sent by the Imperial German Embassy. Here's the thing, though. People weren't taking cruises, really. They weren't just on holiday. This was the primary way to travel between the United States and Europe. You had to get on a boat. Airplanes weren't taking passengers just yet. Okay, that wasn't a thing. So this is the only way to move across the water to get from the United States or Canada into Europe. And the reason for that, people had business to take care of. They had families to visit. There were things that they were doing. Now, when people saw this notice, their thought process was, okay, well, that makes sense. If you're on a ship that is, for instance, a military boat, that makes good sense. Or if you're part of the Merchant Marine, which is, a heavily armed cargo kind of ship. But a luxury liner, people didn't think that that would get attacked. But on May 7th, 1915, Americans were shocked by the news that Germans had sunk a large British luxury liner. This would have been a cruise ship. This is the way people traveled, though. It wasn't just for a holiday. It was traveling. This was shot up, torpedoed off of the coast of Ireland, called the Lusitania, which was the original name of Portugal. But this is a British luxury liner. Over 1,000 persons, including over 100 Americans, lost their lives in the disaster. Why did the United States get so angry about this? It wasn't just because we lost over 100 Americans. It was because we lost 100 Americans while they were on a ship that was simply to get them from point A to point B. They weren't involved in a war. The ship was not armed. They just got blown out of the water for the reason of they flew the British flag. It was a British ship. The Sussex Pledge. This was Germany's pledge, and they were just saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. They pledged not to sink any more merchant vessels without warning. Merchant vessels would be things that are carrying cargo without saving human lives because, that was their MO. They would shoot boats that were cargo boats. And you could say, well, maybe they thought there was, weapons on board. Okay. But then they would sail away without rescuing those that they had shot into the water and just left people to drown. This Sussex Pledge they were compelled to sign it that they would, from now on, attempt to save the human lives. Unless those ships attempted to escape or offer resistance. That was the only caveat. Germany said, hey, we're not going to try and save the lives of those people on that boat if they try to shoot at us or if they try to escape from us. Okay. The National Defense Act. This provided for an increase in the size of the regular army and the organizing of a National Guard of 450,000 men, subject to be called into action by the president. We weren't at war. The United States was not at war, but we needed to be prepared because a luxury liner with American lives on it was shot out of the water. The United States knew that they had to be prepared. Now, the idea of the National Guard, those are people who would be helping really to guard the people in the United States themselves originally. So this is a national defense. This is about us defending ourselves, not going out and being offensive and taking the war to Europe. Okay, what ended up bringing the United States into the war? It was the release of this. It's called the Zimmermann Note. This was a secret message in which the German Foreign Secretary sent to the German Minister of Mexico and proposed that they form an alliance if the United States entered the war. Now, here's the story behind it. The Germans sent this note as a secret coded message. The British intercepted it. The president at the time was Woodrow Wilson, and he had just gotten his re-election based on the phrase, he kept you out of the war. They knew that he was not really going to be the person to get the United States to help Britain in this war. So they released it not just to him, but to the United States newspapers. And so everybody got to read this secret message. So this was originally sent by the German Foreign Secretary to the German minister in Mexico. And he said, I want you to go to the Mexican government and tell them that we want to have an alliance with them, Mexico and Germany. And here's the deal. If we win, If the United States enters the war, we will help you wipe them out. Specifically, we will return to you your lost territory in New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. This was the property that was gained with a treaty, and then it was paid for on top of that after Mexico lost the war. So this was a harsh thing for the people of Mexico. They didn't like the fact that they had lost some of that property in lower part of what is now the United States. But we had actually moved all the way into Mexico City, and we had captured their capital. We could have taken all of Mexico at that point. We did not. We went back to the border that had been agreed upon between Texas and Mexico when Texas was an independent nation, and then we purchased other land from Mexico at that point. So that land boundary had been settled a couple of times, but here is this note saying, we will help you get that property back if you will fight on our side, just in case the United States enters the war. And they were afraid that the United States would enter the war because of the Lusitania incident. Here is the actual telegram. Okay, we have it. So it says, this is from Germany. We intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare. That means it doesn't matter who is in the water with those submarines. If it's not a German vessel, if it doesn't belong to one of Germany's group, then they are going to blow it out of the water. We shall endeavor, in spite of this, to keep the United States of America neutral. The United States was not happy about ships being attacked for no reason, especially since so much of our income came from trade. Okay. In the event of this not succeeding, that is keeping America neutral, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance on the following basis: make war together, make peace together, generous financial support, and an understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The settlement in detail is left to you. You will inform the President of the above most secretly as soon as the outbreak of war with the United States of America is certain, and add the suggestion that he should, on his own initiative, invite Japan to immediate adherence and at the same time mediate between Japan and ourselves. Tell the President to also get a hold of Japan and see if they want to join in on our side as well. Please call the President's attention to the fact that the ruthless employment of our submarines now offers the prospect of compelling England in a few months to make peace. We are going to blow everything out of the water so that we can force England to their knees. We want to make peace, meaning we want to win. The United States remained neutral for the first 3 years of the war, and we were the target of attack by the Central Powers through actions such as the Zimmerman note that we just read, and the sinking of 4 unarmed American merchant marines. The U.S. finally declared war on Germany April 6, 1917. Now, the result of the Selective Service Act. It required all men from the ages of 21 to 30 to register with local draft boards. That has since gone down to about 18 years of age and under 30. The reason for this, we needed to build an army very, very quickly. We did not have a draft system so much in place permanently before this. Before that, there was a draft during the Civil War, but it wasn't permanent and it was ended pretty, as soon as the war was over. But here is the Selective Service Act. It is preparing to go to war and getting a lot of men to be soldiers very, very quickly. The War Industries Board began to regulate businesses, private businesses, all phases of industrial production and distribution in an attempt to coordinate industry support of the war effort. When we look at this, we think, well, of course, we're at war. This is necessary. It can be necessary. It can be very effective. But generally, when the government gets involved in business, it is a disaster. You have business going bankrupt and the government just kind of throwing money out, trying to prop them up. We are going through an issue right now in the United States with this quarantine, and there have been suggestions that we go back to this kind of thing where the United States government takes over businesses and forces and compels them to make ventilators and masks and everything to stop the coronavirus. What has ended up happening is private businesses have stepped forward and said, hey, we are volunteering. We are going to voluntarily change how we manufacture so that we can manufacture things like masks and ventilators, and that's what they have started doing. And it's so much better when a private business does this than if the government does it, because guess what? The private businesses who are already successful know how to run the business. It's amazing. People who are in government tend not to be businessmen. They tend to be lawyers. That's pretty much the number one thing. So it's very different when you have someone who's in business actually running the country. So here, this began to set prices on a variety of goods, which is going to cause shortages. When you set prices, it's going to cause shortages. It was also authorized to tell manufacturers what they could produce, how much they could produce, and to whom they could sell. So the government really got involved in every aspect of these private businesses and compelled them to start making for the war industry, which everybody understood was necessary, but it doesn't mean it was a good thing. Does that make sense? It would be better if private businesses were able to do this on their own. That would have been better. Okay, we're going to stop right there. Hey, I did it before 4:30. That's good. So go ahead and watch this lecture. I won't be getting back together with you until at least Monday. Just wanted to remind you that you need to read a little bit of words every day. I gave you the suggestion of about 2 chapters a day. On Monday, we'll start talking a little bit about what you should have read since Tuesday, and just do a little bit of homework every day. I don't want you to get behind. If you sent me homework in my private email, I am working on that today. I'm working on it right now. I'm trying to get it all done so I can enjoy a weekend with my husband. So please just keep plugging away, keep doing your thing. You don't have to send me, please don't send me any more emailed homework unless you absolutely cannot get up to the school when we're done with the book. Okay, if you can finish it all in the book and then just turn your book in, that will be so much better for me. And hopefully for you and your family. It'll cause a little less tension with having to get on somebody's computer and emailing the homework. So I'm trying to kind of smooth that out a little bit. But have a really great weekend. I hope you have a wonderful time with your family, and I will talk to you again on Monday. Bye.